Welcome to Easy IELTS. Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing good. My name is Loveleen and I will be your instructor for this 4-part training series. We will be covering 4 sections of IELTS in detail, one each in every video, and this is Chapter 1 Listening. This right here, I can proudly say that we have designed a comprehensive course on YouTube available to everyone. We're going to go step by step, module wise, solve examples, learn tips and tricks. There are 4 sections, hence the 4 videos. I wanted to cover them in detail, and that's the only way possible for me to split them up. I really do believe in IELTS. Practicing makes all the difference, so we will be practicing solving those questions together. Again, this is Chapter 1 Listening, but first we will discuss some essential facts like where to book, point system, all of that. All right, let's get started. Let's begin with the basics. What is IELTS? What is its format? IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, where your proficiency in the language is tested. In other words, how fluent or how good you are at understanding and speaking English. It's created by the Cambridge University based in United Kingdom, so most of the accent in the listening test is a British accent. Now, 2 kinds of testing that's really important to understand. There's academic and there's general. Academic, as the name suggests, is for everyone going abroad for study purposes, and general training or GT is for work purposes, residency, all of that. Please make sure you register for the right one when you're booking. Alright, so after you've chosen academic or general, you'll need to select whether you want to attempt a paper-based test or a computer-based test. This option really is a matter of preference, but I do suggest a paper-based test just because if you're not a fast typer like me, you may waste time figuring that out when you only have a 60-minute window to take the writing portion of the test. Also, having a paper in front of you will help you underline, circle important parts, and things you like to come back to while you're reading. But again, depends on the test giver, so I will let you decide. Let's talk booking. So, where do you book? The 2 agencies that conduct these tests are IDP or British Council. I have heard that in India, British Council is no more conducting these tests. It's only IDP. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But if you are booking for PR here in Canada, you can book with British Council as well. I have come across students that booked with both, and honestly, guys, there is no difference. Just think of them as 2 different names for the same thing. I do suggest, however, if you have a choice, book your test depending on the dates you prefer, but there's not a major difference here. Alright, moving forward is bands and modules. I'll give you a quick summary for modules first. There are 4 different modules, 4 different parts or 4 different sections of the test called listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Of course, we will get to these in detail once we start them chapter-wise, but for now, all you need to know is that there are 4 different modules, and let's focus on how the scoring is done. So basically in IELTS, there are no letter grades, there are no marks. There's simply bands calculated through a bunch of different criteria. For now, all you need to know is that there is a total of 9 bands, which is the maximum score. 1 is the lowest score. If you don't attempt the exam, only then you get a 0. Otherwise, 1 to 9. 1 is the minimum, 9 is the maximum. Now, this is where a lot of students get confused understanding this, whether it is a module-based score you need or an overall score you need. What do I mean by that? Let's just quickly look at an example here. Let's say you are applying for permanent residency through express entry or PNP, whatever it is, and your criteria specifically is 8777. If you get 8677, then you haven't fulfilled your criteria, your module-based criteria. In that case, you have to retake the test. But in some cases, for example, a study permit, your university might only look at overall score. So in this case, the overall score is 7.5, and if your university said 6 or higher, then you've passed the test because you've fulfilled your overall score criteria. So really important to know whether you're looking for module-based points or you're looking for overall score. There are a bunch of different calculators online that you can calculate this with as well, and you can go on there and look for average of your bands as well. Now, moving on to calculations, we know what bands are, but what is this criteria that I keep talking about? This is essential to understand to score good, because if you don't know how they mark your test, then you won't understand how to prepare for it, especially when it comes to writing and speaking. But we'll start with listening first. Listening test is same for academic and general. They give you the same test. It's 40 minutes long. It's also the first one. So the first test you get is listening, 40 minutes long with 40 questions. Each question is of 1 mark. So if you get 40 right, you get 40 marks. If you get 35 right, you get 35 marks. And that goes the same for reading, 40 questions. If you get 1 right, you get 1 mark, 40 right, 40 marks. It is, however, a little bit longer than listening. It is 60 minutes long. And it's also different for academic and general. The text in academic is more, textbookish. General training is more daily life articles, stuff like that. It is also calculated differently, as you can see, because this is comparatively easier to attempt than academics. So the checking is a little bit more strict in this one. Writing and speaking, however, have a completely different set of criteria. I'm not going to get into detail about these because there is a lot of area to cover. Some quick examples I can give you are vocabulary, fluency, task response, etc. And with that, we conclude our introduction. Let's officially start chapter 1, listening. If you haven't already, I suggest you pause the video and go grab a pen and a notebook to take notes, because we will be solving examples as we go. All right, let's get into it. Let's begin. Welcome to chapter 1, listening. First, let's talk format, structure, and accents. As I mentioned previously in the introduction, listening is mostly in a British accent, so 90% of the accent is British. The other ones would be American, Australian, sometimes Indian, but mostly British. Other than that, for format, the test will be 30 minutes long. I know I said it's 40 minutes long, but bear with me. So the first 30 minutes, you're actually going to listen to a recording. So section 1 is question 1 to 10, section 2 is 11 to 20, 3 is 21 to 30, and 4 is 31 to 40. Each question is 1 mark each, so if you get all 40 right, you get 40 marks. Now, here's the last 10 minutes come into play. So basically what happens is you listen the audio for 30 minutes, and in the last 10 minutes, you get that time to transfer your answers onto your answer sheet. So this is the answer sheet that you're going to give to the examiner, and this is what's going to get marked. So when you're actually attempting the test, you're doing it on your question paper, not the answer sheet, because it's really fast, right? The listening, you're trying to listen, you're trying to answer. So you're basically just scribbling down the answer on your question paper, and then in the last 10 minutes, you neatly write it down on your answer sheet. Another thing I would like to mention here is don't worry about headphones, because they will be provided at the test center. Make sure they're working. They will ask everyone in the hall, are the headphones working properly? Can you hear the recording? I suggest you take that time to adjust the volume on just how you like it. Now you've got 4 sections, and let's talk about the types of sections. So section 1 is the slowest, and then it goes fast, fast, or fastest. There are also breaks when you jump to another section, and also in between the section itself. What I mean is, for example, for section 1, you do questions 1 to 5, and there's a 25-second break, and then you do questions 6 to 10. Same for this one, you do 11 to 15, a little bit break, and then you do the other 5. The only section that doesn't have a break in itself is section 4, hence it's the fastest, and also people consider it to be the hardest to solve out of all. Now, section 1 is slowest. It is a little bit easier to understand. It is usually a conversation between 2 people on phone. One person is asking for information, the other is providing that information. So the answers are generally clear in the scripting and easy to understand. Then you move on to section 2, which is usually a monologue. meaning only one person is speaking. It is in a social setting, someone is organizing something. Section 3 is a group of 2 to 4 people in an educational setting. So it's a group of students usually. Section 4, again, a monologue on an academic subject, but this one has no breaks, like I said, so people find it more challenging. In my opinion, though, I do feel like section 3 is a little bit harder to do because there's so many people talking, right? It's a group setting, so 2 to 4 people. Sometimes there's a lot of distractions and you miss the answers. So I think that section 3 is the hardest, but it differs from person to person. Now let's talk about what I mean when I say difficulty level. How do we separate the sections and prep for them? Here are some examples. So number 1 is conversation type. Is it a monologue? Is it a conversation? Is it 2 people or more? So the more the people, the more the difficulty. Also, if it's a longer monologue, like section 4, right? The more the difficulty. Then types of questions. MCQs sometimes have short options, sometimes have long options. If they have longer options, you don't get a lot of time to read them all and to remember them all. So that becomes harder to solve. There's map labeling, sentence completion, form completion, so on. So types of questions also determine how difficult your question type is going to be. And the last one is distractions. Now, what happens in listening is they will never give you the answer just, on a silver platter. You have to identify the distractions and you have to identify the answer from those distractions. What's the meaning of that? So, for example, your question is, what time train shall I take? And person 1 says, the 8 a.m. will suit you best. Person 2 says, great, then I will take the 8 a.m. train. And then the person 1 again says, oh, but that might not be the best option. You should catch a 7:45. And then the person responds, sounds like a plan. Thanks for the heads up. Now, if you're not listening properly, you're going to go and mark 8 a.m., right? That's your answer because that person said, okay, I will take 8 a.m. But then they said something else and they followed up with something else. And this other person said, sounds like a plan. Thanks for the heads up. They changed their mind. Sounds like a plan, meaning, okay, I will do that. So in this case, your answer is not 8, it's 7:45, it's 7:45. So you will get a lot of distractions like this in your listening. So you have to look out for them. And this is what I mean by difficulty levels. All right, let's practice. Before we start playing the recordings, let me show you the test instructions. Okay, so this is your answer sheet, like I said, and these are the instructions you get on your question paper. In the actual test, you will be given the following instructions. Do not open this question paper until you are told to do so. Write your name and candidate number in the spaces at the top of this page. So candidate name here, candidate number here. Center number will be provided to you at the center and then your test date. Listen to the instructions for each part of the paper carefully. Answer all the questions. There are no negative marks for wrong answers, so never ever leave a blank space on your answer sheet. While you're listening, write your answers on the question paper. You will have 10 minutes at the end of the test to copy your answers onto the separate answer sheet. Use a pencil. Only a pencil is allowed in IELTS tests, all of the tests, listening, reading, writing, all of the tests. So I believe that they provide it to you at the test center as well. I'm not sure if they do it at the Indian test center, but I know they do it at some places. At the end of the test, you will be asked to hand in the question paper. So you don't get to keep the question paper, you have to give it back to them. But when you're attempting the test, you will be writing your answers on the question paper because, like I said, it goes by so fast that you don't want to write your answers directly on the answer sheet. Write it on the question paper, but then you have to hand it back. You don't get to keep it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at types of questions. There are several types of questions. We will try to solve one of each so you get an idea of how to prep for each kind. and then we'll look at a sample, and then we'll look at the solution as we go. Okay? A couple things before we begin. Academic and general training has no difference when it comes to listening. I do want you to be harsh when checking. No leniency, no giving yourself marks for spelling mistakes, because you do get a 0 in the exam when that happens. Try to write quickly on a question paper as the audio gets played, but in a writing that you can understand at the end, so you can transfer those answers neatly onto your answer sheet. I will try to speak as slow as possible so that everyone listening can understand me, but there is a possibility I might start rambling, so I apologize in advance. All right, let's look at the question here. This is an example that's been done for you. They will play the audio for this first, and then only they'll start playing the audio for questions 1 to 5. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to play the audio. You're going to look for the answers, try your best. And then once you're done, we will discuss this question, and we will discuss on how to look for answers in questions like these. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, play this, and best of luck.
Test 1. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a clerk at the inquiries desk of a transport company and a man who is asking for travel information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning, Travel Link. How can I help you?
Good morning. I live in Bayswater and I'd like to get to Harbour City tomorrow before 11 a.m.
Well, to get to Bayswater...
No, I live in Bayswater. My destination is Harbour City.
Oh, sorry, right. So that's Bayswater to Harbour City. Are you planning to travel by bus or train?
The man wants to go to Harbour City, so Harbour City has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning, Travel Link. How can I help you?
Good morning. I live in Bayswater and I'd like to get to Harbour City tomorrow before 11 a.m.
Well, to get to Bayswater...
No, I live in Bayswater. My destination is Harbour City.
Oh, sorry. Right, so that's Bayswater to Harbour City. Are you planning to travel by bus or train?
I don't mind, really. Whichever option is faster, I suppose.
Well, if you catch a railway express, that'll get you there in under an hour. Let's see. Yes, if you can make the 9:30 a.m. express, I'd recommend you do that.
Great. Which station does that leave from?
Helendale is the nearest train station to you.
Did you say Helensvale?
No, Helendale. That's Helendale.
What's the best way to get to the Helendale station then?
Well, hang on a minute while I look into that. Now, it seems to me that you have 2 options. Option 1 would be to take the 7:06 bus from the Bayswater Shopping Centre to Central Street. When you get there, you transfer to another bus which will take you to the station. Or the second option, if you don't mind walking a couple of kilometres, is to go directly to Central Street and get straight on the bus going to the train station.
OK, which bus is that?
The 792 will take you to the station.
I guess the walk will be good for me, so that might be the better option. What time do I catch the 792?
There are 2 buses that should get you to the station on time, one just before 9 o'clock and one just after. But Look, at that time of the morning it might be better to take the earlier one, just in case there's a traffic jam or something. The 8:55 is probably safer than the 9:05.
Yeah, I don't want to miss the train, so I'll be sure to get on the 5 to 9 bus.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10.
All right, welcome back. So these are the answers for our first 5 questions here. Let's take a look. So number 1 is 9:30 a.m. Number 2 is Helendale. Number 3 is Central Street. Number 4 is 792 and number 5 is 8:55 a.m. Now, if you got the answers correct, wonderful, but even if you didn't get them, that's perfectly fine. IELTS is something that takes a lot of practice. You're still getting used to the accent, you're still getting used to the types of questions and the whole test overall. So it's fine if it takes time. Don't panic if you didn't get all of them right, okay? Now let's discuss facts and tips and how you can do better in finding and looking for answers in a question like this. So this is my facts sheet here. So let's look at point number 1. Number 1 is spelling mistakes. So spelling mistakes equals to incorrect. So if you've got spelling wrong for Helendale or Central Street, then it is incorrect. Number 2 is question. So no more than 2 words and or a number. The first thing you need to do when you look at your question paper is you need to read the question, right? So complete the notes below. Write no more than 2 words and or a number. What does this mean? No more than 2 words. So 2 words meaning express train are 2 words. So that's fine. 2 words and a number is also fine. So 2 express trains is also fine. Or a number or just a number like 2. But if you're writing express train city or 2 express trains city, whatever, if you're using more than 2 words, then your answer is incorrect. So always make sure you're following the instructions correctly, because in some questions, like over here it's 2 words, some questions is 1 word, some questions it's numbers only. So you have to pay attention to that. Predictions. Who will give the answer and what could be the answer? Now, predictions are something we're going to be talking about a lot in IELTS, but what does it mean? Why does it matter? Basically, when you're reading the text, when you're looking at your question paper with the first glance, you need to understand the text. And if you understand the text, then half of your job is done. Let me give you an example. So, for example, question number 1 here. Express train leaves at dash. So we know that express train leaves at probably a time, right? So we're looking for a time. Then nearest station is dash. So we know that we're looking for a location. I could predict that I'm looking for a time, and I could predict that I'm looking for a location. Number 706 bus goes to, again, I could predict that it's a location. Number, so this is a number, so I know number is the answer. Earlier bus leaves at, again, this is a time. So now I've read the question in the first 30 seconds given to me, and I know for the first 5 questions I'm looking for a time, location, a number and time. So I know exactly what I'm looking for to grasp from the audio and the scripting that they give us. This is really important because this is section 1, right? First 5 questions are generally easier than the rest of the test. But when you go on to section 3, you go on to section 4, it gets harder and more challenging. And in questions like these with longer options, you need to be able to predict the answers so you know what you're looking for. Next up is sequencing. This is yet another point that's really important to understand. Always in chronological order. What does that mean? Your answers will always come in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's never going to be 1 and then they give the answer for 4 and then they go back to 2. Never happens. Always in a chronological order. So for example, let's say you know that number 1 is 9:30 and you missed number 2 And then you hear the answer for number 3 and you know that's Central Street, but you're still waiting for number 2. So where did that go? If that happens, most probably you've missed it. So the best thing to do in that scenario is just to move on, lest you miss, the next 3. Because listening is fast paced and it flows and it connects together in a lot of question types. So you just have to pay really close attention to what they're saying, or else you lose focus and you lose the answers. So if you feel like you've missed something, chances are you have. So in that situation, please move on to the next question. And the last one is write units. So there would be some questions where they would give you the units and some questions where they won't give you the units. In this case, they haven't given you the units. So we're writing for time AM and no other units here. So just for time, right? But in some cases, in fact, in the next sample we're going to do, they have units already written. So in that case, you don't have to write units. Now, a couple additional things I'd like to mention in this specific question is number 1, Helendale, and number 2, the word 706. So what happens in British English is that sometimes the letters itself from the alphabet, so A to Z is the alphabet and A, B, C, D are letters. These are pronounced differently in British English than they are in Indian English. A good example here is H. So in Indian English, we would say HELE and DALE. But did you notice that when she was speaking, she said H. So in American English and British English, they usually say H and not H. So when you're listening for these letters, make sure you understand what they're saying. The words have different sounds, and the sound just generally a little bit distinct from what we're used to saying them as. So a good way to find that out is, even if you go on Google today and Google letter in British English, pronunciation of letters in British English, I'm pretty sure you'll find something. So make sure you get on that. And if you don't understand pronouncing these letters, then you have a better understanding of them, because if they are dictating a spelling, you need to understand what they're saying, right? Let's move on to number 2, which was 706. Now, basically, all the numbers are said the same way, except for 0. Now, we say 0, but they say O. So, they wouldn't say 706, they would say 706. So, another thing that you have to watch out for, if you don't know what O is, you'll go and write an O. I mean, O is like a 0, so you probably will get the mark, but you have to understand these things, and you have to know what expressions they're using for letters or numbers. The last one over here I'd like to mention is number 5. So this is similar to the distraction that we just talked about in a difficulty level. Earlier bus leaves at 8:55, but he didn't say 8:55. He said, okay, I will take the 5 to 9 bus. So another thing is that you need to understand timing. So what's 5 to 9? What's quarter to 8? What's 7:30? So you need to know these things. So half past something, meaning 30 minutes past that. So 7:30 meaning 7:30, right? And 5 to 9 means there's still 5 minutes left for it to be 9. So 9 बजते हुए 5 मिनट रह गए. So 5 to 9 is 8:55. And then quarter to 8 means 15 minutes to 8, right? So that's 7:45. So you have to understand these expressions as well, so you know when they're talking about time, you're writing the correct time down and not the incorrect answer. All right, that's it for form filling. Let's move on to the next one. Next up is table completion from section 1. We did questions 1 to 5 from the same section. Now we're going to do questions 6 to 10. It says complete the table below, write no more than one word and or a number for each answer. So always read the format of the question before you write the answers down. You can have about 30 seconds reading the table, and I'm going to play the audio now. It starts right away. So you can pause the video here to read, to look at the table briefly. And once you're done, we'll discuss the answers together. Okay? Best of luck.
Listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
By the way, how much will I have to pay in fares?
Well, you can get a ticket on the bus for $1.80 cash, and you'll need $10 each way for the train. Wait, do you have a travel link card?
No, but I can get one before tomorrow.
Okay, well, that'll make it considerably cheaper then. The bus will cost $1.50 each way, and the train to Harbour City will still cost $10 because you'll be travelling during peak hours in the morning. So no savings there, I'm afraid. However, if you could come back at an off-peak time...
What does that mean?
Well, if you could start your return journey before 5 p.m. or later than 7:30 in the evening...
Actually, I wasn't planning on coming back till at least 8 o'clock anyway.
Well, in that case, you can make quite a saving if you use your travel link card. You did say you were planning to purchase one, didn't you?
Yes, I'll pick one up later today.
Good. That would mean your return train journey would only cost you $7.15 with your card.
Thank you.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
Actually, there is. Do you know if I can use the travel link card on ferries?
If you're thinking of the Harbour City ferries that go back and forth between the North and South Bay, those are the commuter ferries, then yes. A one-way trip costs $4.50, but with your card you'd make a 20% saving and only pay $3.55.
So $3.55 for the commuter ferry. What about the tour boats?
You mean the tourist ferries that go upriver on sightseeing tours? No, they only take cash or credit card. They're not part of the travel link company.
Oh, I see. I don't suppose you know the cost of a tour?
In actual fact, I do, because I took a friend on the trip upriver just last week. We decided on the afternoon tour, and that was $35 each. But I understand that you can do the whole day for $65.
Thank you. You've been a great help.
My pleasure. Enjoy your day out.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at the questions first before we take a look at the answers so we can predict some of them. So we know this is a table about transport, cash fare, card fare. If you look here, these look like kinds of transport, bus, train, ferries. So question number 6 has a unit in front of it. It has a dollar sign. So we know that this is a cash amount. Number 7 has a unit after it. So this is PM. This is the time we're looking for. 8 is again a dollar sign. So this is money. Number 9 is dash ferry. Now we are in the kinds of transport section. And if you look at the one below it, it says tourist ferry. So this might be another kind of ferry. Number 10th is tourist ferry dash. This one says tourist ferry whole day. So this might be half day, or it might be naming the time of a day like morning, evening, or afternoon. Great. So these are the answers. Number 6 is $1.80. Number 7 is $7.30. Number 8 is $7.15. 9th is commuter and 10th is afternoon. Now, the one question where a lot of students have trouble is number 9 is commuter. They don't seem to understand that it is a commuter ferry. And the reason is because they probably don't know what the word means. So commuter is a person who travels some distance to work on a regular basis. So you wouldn't say I'm traveling or going to work. You would say that I'm commuting to work. So that's the meaning of commuter. Okay. Our facts and tips sheet is fairly similar to the first one. So spelling mistakes are incorrect. If you got commuter afternoon wrong, then mark it negative. No more than one word, we know this. Predictions, we did the predictions. So who will give the answer? What could be the answer? In table completions, you always have to make sure you're looking at the information above and below, so as to figure out the best way to decode that table and predict where the answers are coming from. Sequence following is always in chronological order, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Write units if units not given. This case, units have been given, so we're not writing the units in the answer sheet. Another thing I would like to mention here is we talked about how letters are pronounced different in British English. We talked about how some numbers might be pronounced different in British English, but the same goes for these dollar amounts. What I mean is, so for example, for 180, we would just write it as 180, okay? But in this case, when they say 180, they're actually saying a decimal point in there as well. So if they're talking about, let's say, a higher dollar amount, like 180, they would say the word 100 in there. So 180 is 180, 715 is, in hundreds. But if they're just saying 715 and then it has a decimal point in between, that means it's $7.15. Similarly, if they're saying just 180, it is $1.80. Oftentimes they would mention $1.80, oftentimes they would just say 180. So it's important for you to understand, how they're talking about some things, so you can get the answer exactly right. Okay, that's it for table completion. Let's move on to what some students find really challenging, something called map labeling, and figure out how to complete that question type. Next up is map labeling. Now, this is a fairly difficult question for many students out there. So don't worry if you don't get this in this try. It does take practice. We'll look at the question quickly before I play the recording for you. This is from section 2, questions 11 to 5. Label the plan below. Choose 5 answers from the box and write the correct letters A to I next to questions 11 to 15. So your questions are 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. These are your options. So you're just to write the letters, A, B, C, D, whatever it is, not the full, art collection, children's books, not the full thing, just the letters. So you can pause the video here for about 30 seconds before I play the recording, because it starts right away. And then we will look at the answers together. Okay, good luck.
You'll hear the librarian of a new town library talking to a group of people who are visiting the library.
Okay, everyone. So, here we are at the entrance to the town library. My name is Anne, and I'm the chief librarian here, and you'll usually find me at the desk just by the main entrance here. So, I'd like to tell you a bit about the way the library is organised and what you'll find where. And you should all have a plan in front of you. Well, as you see, my desk is just on your right as you go in. And opposite this, the first room on your left has an excellent collection of reference books and is also a place where people can read or study peacefully. Just beyond the librarian's desk on the right is a room where we have up-to-date periodicals such as newspapers and magazines. And this room also has a photocopier, in case you want to copy any of the articles. If you carry straight on, you'll come into a large room, and this is the main library area. There is fiction in the shelves on the left and non-fiction materials on your right, and on the shelves on the far wall, there is an excellent collection of books relating to local history. We're hoping to add a section on local tourist attractions too later in the year. Through the far door in the library, just past the fiction shelves, is a seminar room, and that can be booked for meetings or talks. And next door to that is the children's library, which has a good collection of stories and picture books for the under 11s. Then there's a large room to the right of the library area. That's the multimedia collection, where you can borrow DVDs and so on. And we also have CD-ROMs you can borrow to use on your computer at home. It was originally the art collection, but that's been moved to another building. And that's about it. Oh, there's also the library office on the left of the librarian's desk. Okay. Now, does anyone have any questions? Yes, thank you, sir.
All right, welcome back. Let's look at the answers here real quick.
You will hear the librarian.
Okay, so question number 11 is H or H, reference books. 12 is G, periodicals. 13 is local history collection. 14 is children's books. And 15 is multimedia. Now, these are the facts and tips I have for this question type. Number 1 is hard to process, but practice makes perfect. Oops, sorry. This is a little bit on the harder side. A lot of people have trouble with map labeling, and the reason for that is that it is something that has a lot of vocabulary that's different from the usual question types. But we will go over that. So don't worry if you didn't get it, it's fine. We still have to learn a lot. Number 2 is read the options. So these are the options over here. And you need to read all of the options, skim through them, but read all of the options before they start speaking. Sequence following with pencil or your finger. If you don't do this, then there's no way you're going to get all of the answers in this. And I'll tell you why. So here's the entrance and the speaker starts speaking, right? So you're at the librarian's desk and then the person says, oh, just opposite that. So now you have your pencil here or you have your finger here or whatever. So you know what the opposite is, and then opposite that. Okay, so you go here and then keep moving forward and to the left and to the right. So this is how you solve map labeling, because you're following the voice of the speaker as they go. Otherwise, you're going to lose track of it, and then you're not going to understand fully, or you're going to lose one or two answers in there. And once that happens, really, if you miss one, that means you've missed at least 2 or 3, because you lose the flow, right? Okay, next one is sequence is always in chronological order. So we know this. It goes from 11 to 15, never 11, 14, and then comes back to 12. Don't miss the origin. This is really important, as important it is to follow the sequence. If you miss the origin, if you miss the entrance, then really you miss the first 3 questions most of the time, because now you know where you are and it connects. The person, when they speak, when they are scripting for a question like this, it's all connected. It goes right to that, left to that, beside that, past that. So in order to in addition to understanding the vocabulary, you also have to understand that if you're missing these landmarks, and if you're missing these references, that you're not going to get the answer. So look at all of the rooms, not just the rooms that have a blank in them, but everything, because you're going to understand, okay, it's beside the seminar room, it's past the library area, to the right of this, to the left of this. So if you don't understand the close by landmarks and references, then you're not going to understand the actual answers when they come. And the last one is vocabulary for directions. So we will look at those in the next couple slides. For this question specifically, I have the scripting. So we will go over this question in detail, so you understand fully what I mean by sequence following, and you understand what I mean by vocabulary for directions. Okay, let's take a look. So one of the things I always tell my students is, just imagine, how Google has a cursor when you're going somewhere and you're on Google Maps. It has a little cursor that kind of follows where you're going. Apply that same idea over here. Okay, so you're the cursor in this case, and you're following the voice of the speaker, and that's how you find the answers. Now, let's look at the script here. One of the skills in a question like this is really to be able to visualize what the place that's being described looks like, then picture yourself walking inside. It makes it a little bit easier. So imagine you are at the entrance and you are standing by a librarian's desk. So it's just easier to follow the voice of the person that way. All right, let's look at the script here. For question number 11, she starts by saying, well, as you see, my desk is just on your right as you go in, and opposite this, the first room on your left has an excellent collection of reference books. So your answer number 1, reference books, comes in the scripting. So how do we know that? How did we find that out? Well, as you see, my desk is just on your right. So her desk, the librarian is speaking, we all know that. So her desk is on to your right. You're standing over here. Okay, great, you found the desk. As you go in and opposite this, so you're going in and opposite this. So opposite the desk on your left, the first room on your left, she said, has an excellent collection of reference books. Okay, so we're in the right room and this is reference books. So we just write, reference books. Sorry. This handwriting is really, really bad. Okay, so we know the answer is H, right? Then she goes on to say, just beyond the librarian's desk on the right. Now she's back to librarian's desk, okay? So we run back here. Just beyond. Beyond means pass, uske baad. Just beyond the librarian's desk on the right is a room where we have up-to-date periodicals. So beyond the desk, we're going past the desk, and over here we are where the periodicals are. So this is G, okay, such as newspapers and magazines. Sometimes if you miss the actual word, you know what newspapers and magazines are. They are periodicals from this option, right? So you can kind of guess the answer. If you carry straight on, so keep going straight on, we're over here, we're in the periodicals, you'll come into a large room, and this is the main library area. So you're in the right spot, we're in the library area. There is fiction on the shelves on the left, good, and non-fiction materials on the right. Okay, we know we're in the right spot, that's perfect. On the shelves on the far wall, so far wall means dur ki wall. So over here is the far wall. There is an excellent collection of books relating to local history. She doesn't straight out say local history collection. She says collection of books relating to local history. So you have to understand that sometimes they are just moving the words a little bit around a little bit, or they're paraphrasing some answers for you. So that is for you to detect here. Okay, so we know that this is D, local history collection. So far so good. Let's move on. Through the far door in the library. So we're over here. We're in the library area. We're in the local history collection area. Through the far door in the library, just past the fiction shelves. So these two I assume are doors. So which door are we looking at? Past the fiction shelves is a seminar room. Okay, so we know that she wants us to be in the seminar room. So we're over here. And that can be booked for meetings or talks. And next door, so we move next door to that is the children's library. Great. Okay, we have children's books here. So this is B, this is children's libraries, which has a good collection of stories and picture books for the under 11s. Notice how she's paraphrasing this information. She's saying good collection of stories and picture books for the under 11s. So under 11s are of course children. So again, these are some things that you have to look out for. For question number 15, she says a large room to the right. So where are we? We're over here. What's our right? Over here. A large room to the right of the library area. Right? So this right and this right is the same right. So we're in the correct room. That's the multimedia collection. Great. So we know it's multimedia, where you can borrow videos and DVDs. So if you miss the word multimedia, again, you know that videos and DVDs means multimedia. So this is option number F. This is multimedia. So the reason I pulled up the scripting here for you is because I wanted you to understand how to follow your pencil, yourself, your cursor, through these maps, and really understand how to find the answers correctly. Now, like I said, if you missed hearing the actual words, sometimes there is related information always. So always pay attention to that. To do well in questions like these, you really need to understand the language of location and direction. So I'm going to share with you vocabulary for location as well as vocabulary for direction. So what do I mean when I say that? I mean this. This is your vocabulary for directions. Now, we have some location vocab and we have some direction vocab. You can go ahead, take a picture of this, save this for later as well. These are some of the most used words that you should note down for practice. Let's look at them quickly. Let's look at location first. So near, next to, in front of, beside, between, across from. So all of these words are going to be used in maps. Then we have direction vocab. Turn to the right, turn left, go straight on, go past, head south, head north, east or west. You know the directions. Northwest is, if this is north, south, east, west, this is northwest, this is northeast, southwest, and southeast. We know this. So it's important that you understand vocabulary like this to do good in map labeling questions. Okay, I hope that clears something up for you. You can go back and you can replay the whole thing and you can solve it again and you can listen to it again. And this time, or you can just simply look at the scripting, just go through it slowly and see what you have missed and where you've missed and how can you do better in the next time. Okay, let's move on to the next question type. Next up, we're going to practice flowchart. This is a relatively easier flowchart. I only have about 4 answers to fill for you. I've taken this from section 1. It says complete the flowchart below, write 1 word only for each answer. Something like this, you always have to make sure that your spelling is correct when you're copying final answers to the answer sheet. This audio starts right away, so pause the video for like 30 seconds and read the questions first. And I'm just going to go ahead and play it for you, and then we'll discuss the answers together, okay? Best of luck.
Hi, Maria. What do you think of the assignment we were given today? It looks challenging, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Damien. I've been thinking about how we're going to get everything done in time.
Why don't we make a flowchart? It might help us plan better.
Great idea. Where shall we start?
Right. Well, initially I thought we ought to look at how the assignment is being assessed, but I'm not so sure now. I think it'd be better if first we scheduled a meeting with the tutor. He can give us a lot of information, which I'm certainly will save us time later.
That's a good idea. Seeing the tutor will help us understand just how much work's involved. What next?
Well, next, I think we need to make sure we're happy we know the main aspects that make up the assessment. We need to recognise those before we can do anything else.
Yes, I can see that makes sense. And then we can put together a schedule for the activities we need to do. It doesn't need to be exact at that stage, does it?
I totally agree. Once that's completed, we need to calculate the possibility of something bad happening. There's always something that goes wrong, isn't there? So we should make an evaluation.
Right. And finally, we'll need some sort of plan. You know, in case something does go wrong.
A contingency plan. That's a good idea. OK, so where's the phone? I need to call the tutor before we forget.
All right, welcome back. Let's move on to looking at the answers together and discussing how to find them. All right, let's take a look at the answers. Number 1 is meeting, number 2 is assessment, number 3 is schedule, and number 4 is evaluation. Also, if you've got the wrong spelling for any of these, then please don't give yourself marks, because in the exam, wrong spelling equals to 0. But it's okay if you've got wrong spelling, because now you know these are some really common words that you might be using in even your writing task 1 and 2. So this is actually great to know the right spelling for that. For facts and tips, I haven't gotten too deep into this question. It is a fairly brief question in the first place. So for the first one, it's the sequence. It's always in the same order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Never goes, haphazardly. Number 2 is practice speed reading. Now, speed reading is a technique that teaches people to read faster and comprehend a lot more information in a shorter amount of time. Basically, you're looking only at the relevant details without reading word for word. Now, this one isn't necessarily a long sentence flowchart, but some multiple choice questions will be. Also, for your reading module, you have bigger paragraphs in your passage, right? So this is actually something that you need to master over time for IELTS, because speed reading is essential and it allows you to finish your exam on time. The next one is understand paraphrasing. Paraphrasing meaning we are saying the same thing, but we are saying it with different words, using synonyms maybe. This question specifically has a lot of paraphrasing in it in the scripting, so that's why I have this in the first place. So let's look at the script real quick. So this question right here is all about paraphrasing. Okay, so let's take a look. Question number 1 was arrange an initial dash with tutor. Instead, in the scripting, they say schedule a meeting. So instead of arrange, it says schedule a meeting. So they replace the word arrange with schedule. Identify key elements involved in the assessment. Main aspects that make up the assessment. So instead of key elements, it's main aspects that make up the assessment. So involved in the assessment became make up the assessment. Organize a rough, put together a schedule of work. Assess risks. Need to calculate the possibility of something bad happening. This is the definition of risk, right? And create an evaluation. We need to make an evaluation. The only reason I have this question up in the first place is because of the paraphrasing. I want you to understand what paraphrasing is and how it would show up in your listening test. So, of course, in answers like these, in questions like these, like short answers, fill in the blank type questions, the answers will be the exact same. They won't be paraphrased because you're not picking from an option, you're writing them as is. So they're going to say the answer out loud, but the surrounding information is always going to be paraphrased. So don't ever go into the exam and expect that in the recording you will hear arrange an initial meeting with tutor and then you just jot down meeting easily. It's not that easy, never happens. So always expect paraphrasing, and from that paraphrasing you need to figure out your answer and write it down. Okay, so that's it for flowchart. Let's move on to the next question type, which is called short answers. So we're now moving on to section 3. The question type is short answers. Like I said, it is section 1 is a little bit easier compared to section 2, and then section 3 is harder, and then section 4 is hardest. In my opinion, I have mentioned before that section 3 I find more challenging, and the only reason is because sometimes a conversation is happening between 2 or more people, and if it's, let's say, 4 people, then it's just there's a lot of distractions in there and it's hard to keep track on who's saying what, and it's hard to predict basically where the answer is coming from. This question specifically, we're only going to listen to a conversation between 2 people, but they're going to talk a lot. This one is 6-minute long audio, so you will have distractions in there. But yeah, go ahead and tell me in the comments which section you find the hardest, but I have in past struggles with this one the most. So again, pause the video here. You can read all the questions. I'm going to start the audio and then we will discuss it together. All right, there we go. And good luck.
Hello and welcome to 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Rob and with me is Finn. Hello, Finn. Finn, are you okay?
49 seconds. I was just holding my breath, Rob.
Okay, is this a new hobby of yours?
Well, actually today we're talking about people living underwater. So I thought I could do with some practice.
Okay, well, why don't you get your breath back now?
Good, yes, good idea.
Today we'll be hearing about scientists who broke the world record for the time spent underwater. They spent an incredible 31 days under the waves. And we'll be learning some related vocabulary too. Right, are you ready now, Finn?
Yeah, I think so. And are you ready, Rob, for this week's question?
Yes, hit me with it.
This week's question is, what is the longest time a human being has held their breath underwater? Is it A, 12 minutes, B, 18 minutes, or C, 22 minutes?
Goodness. Well, it's a long duration, all of them. I'm going to go for the middle one, B, 18 minutes.
18 minutes, Good guess. I'll tell you if you're right or wrong at the end of the programme. But, Rob, don't hold your breath.
Very good. Don't hold your breath. A phrase which means don't expect that a particular good thing will happen. Anyway, what about these scientists? Did they hold their breath for 31 days?
No, but they did live underwater in a laboratory. Now, that's a room or building with scientific equipment in it for doing tests.
Right. Well, one of the men was Fabien Cousteau, who's an oceanographer, someone who studies the oceans. He's the grandson of Jacques Cousteau, a French man who held the previous record of 30 days underwater.
Fabien said he wanted to break his grandfather's record to raise awareness of ocean conservation. Now, that's protecting and looking after the ocean.
Well, he's raised our awareness, at least.
He has indeed.
Now, I'm interested in how they lived underwater. Listen to Fabien talking about the laboratory called Aquarius. Which word does he use to say that the lab is completely underwater?
Aquarius is very unique in that it's the only undersea marine laboratory. It gives us a unique platform from which to live and explore this final frontier on our planet.
He called it an undersea laboratory. Now, undersea is, as you might guess, a word similar to underwater, and it means under the sea.
Yes. And he called this undersea world the final frontier. It's an interesting phrase. It comes from the Star Trek television series, which called space the final frontier. The last place that humans have not yet travelled to. The last place to explore.
Yes, and apparently this laboratory was 18 metres under the sea in Florida. And being there allowed them to spend less time diving and more time observing marine life.
OK, marine life. So that means of the sea. So marine life means sea life, plants and animals that live in the sea. They were particularly interested in investigating the effects of pollution on coral.
Now, I know they did this to raise awareness of marine conservation, but what I'm really interested in is what life was like for them. What was it like to live underwater for so long?
Good question. Well, surprisingly, perhaps, life there wasn't too bad. They had air conditioning, hot water and internet access.
Sounds very comfortable, doesn't it? Although I do know that Fabien struggled with one aspect. Now, listen to him to find out what.
Unfortunately for me as a French person, the food will also be simulated. Freeze-dried, astronaut type of food, canned foods, things like that. So it's a horror show for me.
Poor Fabien. He said the food was pretty awful. Maybe it was English food.
Probably. As a Frenchman, he wasn't impressed by the freeze-dried food. Now, that means food which is quickly frozen and dried to preserve it.
Yes, he thought it was astronaut-style food. The sort of food you would eat as an astronaut, someone who travels into space.
Now, and coming back to dry land, they had to spend 16 hours decompressing.
Yes, that's very important. Divers have to decompress to return to their original body pressure when they come out of the water.
It sounds like a long time to wait for a good meal. So, Rob, what do you think? Would you like to live underwater for a month?
Absolutely not.
No,
I would
not at
get
all.
very claustrophobic. I
Not
hate
even
those sort of spaces.
the astronaut food. So anyway, let's see if you got this week's question right. I asked you what you thought the world record for holding your breath for underwater was.
And I went for 18 minutes.
And actually, it was even longer than that.
Wow.
22 minutes, 0 seconds. By a chap called Stig Severinsen, who's from Denmark. And Stig was allowed to hyperventilate, so to breathe very fast and deeply, using oxygen before the attempt. So I think don't try this at home, anyone. That brings us to the end of today's 6-Minute English. We hope you've enjoyed today's underwater program. And please join us again soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that one was long. Welcome back. Let's take a look at the answers together, and we will discuss on how to do better in this question type as well. Let's take a look here. First, we'll read the question together. It says, answer the questions below, write only one word or a number. So if you wrote more than one word, or you wrote a number and a word, then your answers are wrong. So only one word, or you are supposed to write a number. So these are the answers here. Number 1 is 31, then it's B, Aquarius, Florida, and 22. Also, if you've spelled any of these wrong, then you don't get a mark, because wrong spellings equal to 0 marks in the IELTS test. So for this one, I'd like to say, even though it was a conversation between just two people, they were talking for a long time and they were talking a lot. So situations like these, you lose focus. This is what happens in questions like these. You just lose your concentration and then you miss the answers. So number one thing in a question like this, especially when you start section 3, just make sure that you are listening to each and every word that they're saying. Another thing you can do is focus on predictions and how to concise meaning, brief the information that you've been given. One of the methods that you can use in something like this is called the verb method. So who, where, when, why, how. Is it a countable or an uncountable answer? So use questions, ask yourself questions like these. For example, for the first one, how many days did the scientists spend under the waves? Right? So this is how we're looking for a number of days. You're predicting that it's going to be a number. What answer did Rob choose? Okay, so this one, they might name a list of answers and you have to focus on which one did he choose. Or maybe look for synonyms of the word choose. What's the name of the laboratory? So this is a what, and we're looking for a name. Where is it situated? Again, we're looking for a location. And what is the world record in minutes? So we're looking for a number here, specifically minutes. And this question is a what. So, and it is a countable question, right? Because you can count minutes. So try to predict the answers also using the verb method, which is who, where, when, why, and how. And if you can count it or not count it. Because it really helps you concise that information and look for the keywords that your answers are hidden in. Another thing I would like to mention for this question here is your second and your fifth question are connected. So what happens when they're, in the podcast, when they're talking about it, they talk about what answer did Rob choose. Originally he says, I choose B. So he chose B. But the other person says, okay, let's find out if you're right at the end. Some students get confused and think, okay, we have to wait until the fifth one to see if my second one is correct. No, it always goes in a chronological order. So technically he chose B and that's your answer. You don't have to wait until the last one to find out if he's right or not. When he does say at the end, 22 minutes and see if you're right, it doesn't matter. what he says at the end. He chose the answer B at the beginning, and that's your answer. So if you were confused about that specific thing, you don't have to wait to finalize your answer if they're saying, oh, let's find out if your answer is right or not. Because guess what? He chose his answer. Done. Move on to the next question. So that's it for this one. What else do I have in my notes here? Let me take a look. So for number 3, what's the name of the laboratory? He named it Aquarius, but he did throw out a couple more names like Sea Lab, Sea Frontier, Star Trek Frontier. So all of these are again what? Distractions. So my only tip for questions like these is concise the information using the verb method. Who, where, when, why, how. Look at the predictions. We're looking for a number, we're looking for a location, we're looking for a name. And just stay concentrated, because if they're talking for a long time, it's easier to lose track. And maybe underline the words, like potential words you think, okay, maybe they can throw a synonym or paraphrase this one here, so I should look out for paraphrasing of something like this. So as soon as you speak a synonym of that word, you catch on to that and you know the answer is coming. Okay, so short answer question type is done. We're going to move on to our next question type, which is MCQs. Now, I know for a fact that for some students, our next question type, which is MCQs or multiple choice questions, they are an absolute nightmare. But don't worry, we'll go step by step in this one as well. So you can understand how we can excel at MCQs, whether they have longer options or they have shorter options. These usually come in more of the difficult sections of listening, and the reason why they have a higher difficulty level is because of the options, right? So you're trying to read everything and you're trying to process what they're saying to you, and then you're trying to look at the instructions, you're trying to pick the correct answer. So it's a lot of information to process in a shorter amount of time. Also, not to mention, MCQs are generally always confusing. This one here is more medium difficulty. The reason I'm not going with too complex of a question is because you need to learn the basics first and then attempt more complicated questions, right? We need to nail the basics before we move on to more of the crazy stuff. So we're only going to do the first 3. We're going to do 21, 22, and 23rd. So just focus on these for now. Again, pause the video, read the questions. I'm going to start the audio and we will discuss the questions later together. All right, there we go. Good luck.
Section 3. You will hear a scientific discussion about how people experience pain. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. As you listen to the first part of the discussion, answer questions 21 to 25.
Scientists at University College London have made a discovery which makes mice pain-free and have reversed painlessness in a woman with a rare condition. I'm joined by Dr. Natasha Curran, consultant in anaesthesia and pain medicine at University College London Hospitals, and by Professor John Wood, lead author of the study and a neuroscientist at UCL. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Natasha, perhaps we can start with perhaps a rather basic question, which is, why do we experience pain at all? What's its purpose?
Pain is highly preserved in humans because we need pain to prevent us further damaging ourselves. However, what we know in many people is that pain continues past when it's useful for us.
And we're all familiar with the idea of sort of feeling pain, but what is happening inside one's body? So when I stub my toe and I scream and shout, what's actually happening inside my body from that moment?
Well, receptors in your toe are getting stimulated and they send messages down your nerves which end up in your brain. And in your brain, various things happen. In one part of your brain, which is the somatosensory cortex, that's the part of the brain that says it's your toe that's feeling the pain or the injury rather than your hand or your head. So that's one part, but then it's much more complex than that because pain is an emotional experience. So it's connected then to all the other parts of the brain, which they give us our experience of pain, if you like. So that depends on the context in which we're having pain, our past experience, what we think the pain means, lots of factors. And then also it connects to what we think we're going to do about the pain. So parts of the brain light up, if you like, how we're going to respond to the pain that we're experiencing.
How big a problem is pain, and how big a burden is this for people to be dealing with?
In the UK, it's massive. In 2011, the National Pain Audit reported that 31% of men and 37% of women live with persistent pain. So that's 14 million people. Their quality of life is very, very poor, much lower than other medical conditions. It's as bad as people who have, for example, Parkinson's disease. One of the reasons it's really important to understand this is because we know that we can actually help these people if they attend special.
All right, welcome back. I hope you found all the answers. Let's quickly look at the tips for questions like these, and we'll discuss the scripting as well for multiple choice questions. Let's take a look at the answers here. So 21st is B, it prevents us from damaging ourselves. 22nd is C, pain is a complex process which involves various parts of our body. And 23rd is also C, 40 million. Now, when it comes to facts and tips for a question like this, I know I keep saying this, but it is hard to process, especially MCQs, because you have so many options, right? And they talk about all the options. So then you get even more confused. Okay, which one is the correct answer here? Because she talked about all of them. And that is what you have to decipher. And that is what you have to learn when it comes to MCQs. And you can only do that. Of course, you can do that by some of the tips I give, but most of it is just practice. Sequence is always in order. So, if you miss one, then just move on. Practice speed reading. Now, this one it doesn't have that long of an option, but usually MCQs would have, maybe if they come in section 4, they would have longer options. So for that, you have to practice speed reading. I mean, you have to practice speed reading anyway because you need it for IELTS, but in this case also, so basically you need to skim through the text and get an idea of what they're going to be talking about. Also, we're only looking at 3 questions here. You're going to have 2 more, right? 21 to 25. Another way of clubbing information together is by the concise method. So the verb method that I talked about, who, where, when, how, that always helps. I love that method when it comes to MCQs with longer options. But you need to club information together when you first look at it. So let's look at question 20 first. Why do people experience pain? Okay, why people pain? It preserves, prevents, or is useful. So we know we're looking for either of 3. It's either preserving something, or preventing something, or it's useful for something. So most likely, there is a possibility that she could use synonyms, or she could paraphrase these preserves, prevents, and these words, useful, right? I mean, there's not a lot of synonyms for humans out there, but most common synonyms in this kind of question would be preserves, prevents, and useful. So we know what to look out for. So you can just quickly underline these words that we're looking out for. Similarly, for the next one, what parts of a body are responsible for feeling pain? So we're looking for parts. Receptors and nerves, so this is just a name, some part of a brain, and pain is a complex process which involves various parts of a body. So when you're listening to her talk, there's a possibility she's going to talk about all 3, but see what she pays the most attention to or comes back to. She might even repeat it twice in her monologue. How many people in the UK suffer from pain? This question here actually, I know they gave all 3 options, but how many people? These are percentages. So we're not looking for a percentage, we're looking for how many people. And also when she's talking about this, she says 31% men and 37% women. We're looking for how many people, both men and women. So this one you can predict easily that the answer might be C, 40 million. Read the question carefully. Of course, you want to write the correct letter. I've seen in the past that somebody wrote the whole thing, so it preserves good health. Don't do that. Just write the correct letter A, B, or C. Vocabulary and understanding of synonyms are your friends. They are your absolute best friends, because without the understanding of vocab and without the understanding of paraphrasing and synonyms, it's going to be really hard for you to know when the answer comes, right? So in this case, she actually just recites all threes and then just picks one and says, but this one is what happens. In some cases, in other questions like we saw, there was a lot of paraphrasing going on. So when that happens, if you don't even know another meaning, another word for this specific word, so for example, for good, another word could be satisfactory also. It could mean the same thing in a different context. So if you don't understand that, then it's going to be hard for you to grab the answers when they come. So start building on that. A good way to do that is, I love to read, so I just would pick up a book, and just start going for it. Underline the words that I don't understand. Write on top of them the meaning. You could write it in English, you could write it in Hindi, you could write it in Punjabi, you can write it in whatever language you're comfortable with. But just start reading. If you pick up a dictionary, I know some students try to mug up like 20-25 words a day, but your brain only has so much information that it can carry. It has only so much space for to process it. So don't jam it with so many words, because at the end of the day, I promise you're not going to even remember one of them, because you're putting so much information in there, and usually without understanding the meaning of it, without understanding what context you can use it in. So my suggestion is, learn 5 words a day. Even if you do 5, I'm more than happy, but learn their meaning and learn the context that you can use them in. So when you use them correctly, and when you understand them correctly. So that is a tip that I can give you for vocabulary, is pick up a book. Don't like reading, pick up a dictionary. And even when you're watching movies for British English, the words that you don't understand, write them down and write the meaning of them. All right. So that's it for this question here. If you didn't get any of these answers, I suggest you go back, listen to it again, and try to see what you missed and how you missed. Each student, everyone learns differently. So not one method is going to work for everyone. I can explain something, I can make an hour-long video on just MCQs, but even from that, maybe only 10% will understand, because everyone learns differently. And the best way to learn IELTS is by practicing. So if you go back and you've missed these answers, you listen to them again, then you will understand, okay, wait, this is what's happening, and this is where she said the answer, and I just wasn't paying attention, or I didn't understand the meaning of the words she was saying, and that's why I missed. So I'll just end the lecture with saying, please keep practicing. Moving on to next question type, known as matching and classification. I've taken this from section 3. One of the biggest challenges with matching questions in the IELTS listening test is that they can be confusing when you first see them. So I always suggest to start by analyzing the question to make sure you fully understand what you have to do. Let's read the question together. What does Jack tell his tutor about each of the following course option? Highlight or underline with your pencil in the exam. What does Jack tell his tutor, and what are the options? So this is our question, right? Questions are 21 to 25. And these are what? Course options. So Jack is going to tell the tutor one of these things about each of the course options. Write the correct letter A, B, or C next to questions 21 to 25. Of course, there are 5 questions and 3 options, so we're going to choose one letter more than once. Now, you have to understand that even before starting the question, Jack is not going to say, I will definitely do it, I may or may not do it, I won't do it. So, of course, look for paraphrasing in there and look for distractions. I'm going to start the audio, and once we're done, we're going to look at the scripting of this actually in complete detail. So best of luck, and there we go.
You will hear a communication studies student talking to his tutor about optional courses for the next semester.
Come in. Oh, hello, Jack. Have a seat. Right. You said you wanted to see me to talk about your options next semester?
That's right. We have to decide by the end of next week. Really, I'd like to do all 5 options, but we have to choose 2, don't we?
Yes, but the choice depends on your major, to some extent. You're majoring in communication studies, aren't you?
That's right.
So, for example, the media studies option will cover quite a lot of the same area you did in the core module on mass communications this semester, the development of the media through the last 2 centuries in relation to political and social issues.
Well, that was interesting, but I've decided I'd rather do something completely new. There's a women's studies option, isn't there?
Yes, Women and Power. Again, it has a historical focus. It aims to contextualize women's studies by looking at the legal and social situation in the 19th and early 20th centuries.
So it would be useful if I intended to specialize in women's studies, but I'm not sure I do, actually.
Well, it might still be useful to give you an idea of the issues involved. It's taught by Dr. Steed.
Oh, really? I'll sign up for that then. What about the option on culture and society?
That addresses the historical debate on the place of culture since the Industrial Revolution in Britain.
So, a historical focus again?
Do I get the message you're not so keen on history?
Well, it's just that we seem to have done quite a lot this semester. Anyway, I'll think about that one.
If you're interested in a course focusing on current issues, there's the option on identity and popular culture. That approaches the subject through things like contemporary film, adverts, soap operas, and so on.
That sounds interesting. Can you tell me who runs it?
Well, it's normally Dr. Stevens, but he's on sabbatical next semester, so I'm not sure who will be running it. It should be decided by next week, though.
Right. Well, I might wait until then to decide. And the last option is Introduction to Cultural Theory, isn't it? I'm quite interested in that too. I was talking to one of the second-year students, and she said it was really useful. It made a lot of things fall into place.
Yes, but in fact, in your major, you'll have covered a lot of that already in Communications 102, so that might be less useful than some of the others.
Oh, I'll forget about that one then.
Now, while you're here, we could also discuss how you're getting on with your core module assignment.
All right, let's take a look at the answers. Before I do that, please remember that this is on more of a challenging spectrum when it comes to IELTS, so don't get disheartened if you didn't find any of these in the first go. We'll look at the scripting in detail, and then you can figure out what you've missed and how to fix it in the next try. 21 is C, he won't do it. 22nd is A, he'll definitely do it. 23rd is B, he may or may not. 24th is also he may or may not, and 25th is C. I've mentioned this before, but you need to understand that Jack is never going to go out and say, I will definitely do media studies, or I may or may not do women and power, or I won't do culture and society. Doesn't happen. Always is going to be paraphrased. So instead he'll say something like, I'll go for that one, or I am interested in that one, or maybe I'll give it a miss, or next semester I'll do that. So you have to look out for these words and make sure that you're not just waiting for this exact wording is my only point. Now, sequence is always in chronological order for the question, but answer order and matching is random. What does that mean? So sometimes what happens is when I say, chronological order, students are waiting for the speaker to talk about all the courses first that he'll definitely do, then all the courses first that he may or may not do, then all the courses that he won't do. But that doesn't happen. Your questions are in an order, but not how the answers. So these are haphazard, right? C, A, B, and then B, C. But questions, of course, he'll go in an order. So they talk about media studies, then they talk about women in power, then talk about culture and society, so on and so forth. Number 2 is understanding the relation to options A, B, C. You need to understand what is the relation of these options to this. So what I mean by saying that is you need to understand what your question is. If you don't understand what you have to do, chances are you're not going to have any answers in your answer sheet by the end of it. So it's really important to understand what the relation is. So you should, in this specific question, you should know that these are course options, and Jack is going to tell the tutor one of these things about each course options. So you know exactly before they even start the audio what you're looking for. Possible synonyms, like I mentioned before, is I'll go for that or I'll give it a miss. I have a separate sheet for this at the very end of this question type, at the end of the explanation for this question type. So you can go ahead and screenshot that then. But just briefly, some of the possible synonyms are I'll go for that, I'll give it a miss. Especially the one thing that you have to pay attention is distractions, right? So in the synonyms, when they say stuff like but and however, these are the most common distractors in a question like this. An example I can give you is, suppose Jack is saying, I'd really like to study media studies, but I think I don't have space for it in my timeline this semester, so I'll give it a miss. So first part of the sentence was I'd really like to study. So if you're just listening to that part of the sentence, then you're not actually catching on to the right answer because you're not listening to the whole sentence. So whenever the word but and however is thrown in there, you need to make sure that you're listening closely because these are common distractors. So that means your answer is coming in the second half and not the first half. Guess if necessary. I only say this because I always tell my students to not leave anything blank in your answer sheet. Taking a chance is better than a definite zero score when it comes to matching in MCQs and all these option questions. Of course, in fill in the blanks, you cannot guess. But questions like these, if you miss the answer, the only thing you can do at this point is guess the answer. So try to look at all the options, right? And then try to eliminate or try to maybe have a probability of maybe this one is right. But yeah, this is desperate time, desperate measures. Don't do it just because. Again, guessing is not something I recommend. It's just desperate times call for desperate measures kind of thing. All right, let's look at the scripting together and we'll start with question number 21. Okay, so Dr. Ray says, for example, the media studies option will cover quite a lot of the same area you did in the core module on mass communications this semester. Now, she mentioned media studies option, so we know that she's talking about question 21. All right, so pay attention now. The development of media through 2 last centuries in relation to political and social issues. So she's just explaining what the course is all about. Then Jack says, that was interesting. Okay, so we know Jack thought it was interesting, but now he's used the word but. Whenever you hear the use of this word and however, know that something is coming. I've decided I'd rather do something completely new. I'd rather do means, yeah, I like it, पर कुछ और करते हैं. That's what it means. I'd rather do something completely new. So because he said this, we know that he's not interested in doing this. He doesn't want to do this. See, this is the distractor right here. The first part of the answer is that was interesting. So a lot of people stop here and say, okay, interesting, he'll do it. No, you have to wait for the rest of it because this is the actual answer. Now they've moved on to the next option. There is a women's studies option, isn't there? So now you've jumped on to the second one and you know they're talking about this. Yes, Women in Power, again, it's a historical focus. It aims to contextualize women's studies by looking at the legal and social situation in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Again, she's explaining a lot of it, but you just have to make sure you don't lose focus when they're becoming lengthy and they're explaining stuff. Jack says, so it would be useful if I intended to specialize in women's studies. So again, this is a distractor, right? He says, okay, it would be useful if I were to specialize in this, but I'm not sure I do actually. So you have to pay attention here. He says, but I'm not sure I do actually. So now you've registered this information and you said, okay, he's not sure. The answer is C. But then Dr. Ray says, well, it still might be useful to give you an idea of the issues involved. It's taught by Dr. Steed. Oh, really? I'll sign up for that then. So, did you just realize what they did? They distracted you with false information. First, he's saying, I'm not sure. So, you've gone out and, ticked answer C. But then, all of a sudden, because it's taught by some other doctor, he wants to sign up for that. So the answer is actually A. Again, distractors like these, watch out for them. It's going to happen a lot in a question type like matching or classification. They want to make it as confusing as they can for you. Moving on to 23, Jack says, what about the option on culture and society? Dr. Ray says that addresses the historical debate, yada yada yada. Jack says, okay, so historical focus again. Dr. Ray says, do I get the message you're not so keen on history? Well, it's just we seem to have done quite a lot this semester. Here comes the answer. Anyway, I'll think about that one. So instead of saying directly, I may or may not do it, he's saying, I'll think about that one. So, make a note of these things. In questions like these, where you get 3 options like this, what is the speaker repeating again and again when you're practicing? What are the words they're using? It's most likely they're going to be using the same diction in the same kind of vocabulary, in all these question types, no matter what the context of the question is. Dr. Ray then says, if you're interested in a course focusing on current issues, there's the option on identity and popular culture. So you know that you've skipped on to question number 24th here. Oh, that sounds interesting. Can you tell me who runs it? It's normally Dr. Stephen, but he's on sabbatical. If you don't know what sabbatical is, it's a leave from work. It's a rest from work. Next semester, so I'm not sure who will be running it. So Dr. Stephen is gone. It should be decided by next week though. Right, well, I might wait until then to decide. Because Dr. Stephen is gone, Jack wants to wait on this one as well. So the answer for this is, he may or may not do it. So instead of saying he may or may not do it, or instead of saying I'll think about that one, he said, I might wait until then to decide. If, for example, this is a different kind of question with maybe not Jack, but somebody else is talking about something else, they might even specify a date or a time here. I might wait until Saturday to decide. So it's going to be similar kind of wording. So you have to basically make a note of, for example, we did the same thing in maps. We did this, it's direction and location vocab in that. So same thing here, look out for the similar kind of distractions that they keep repeating over and over again in these question types. Okay, last but not the least, introduction to cultural theory. So she's mentioned it, Jack's mentioned it here, and the last option is introduction to cultural theory. Isn't it? I'm quite interested in that too. I was talking to one of the second year students and she said it was really useful. It made a lot of things fall into place. Now, when Jack started speaking about this course, he was really excited about it and he keeps saying that he's really interested, it's really useful and I want to take it. Well, he didn't say I want to take it, but he means that. And then Dr. Ray says, yes, but in fact, in your major, you'll have covered a lot of that already in communications, 1 or 2, so that might be less useful than the others. So Jack had his mind made up about the course, But then Dr. Ray goes out and then she changes his mind. So then Jack in turn says, oh, I'll forget about that one then, which means that he won't do it. So instead of saying he won't do it, he said, I'll forget about that one. So again, going to repeat the same thing, sounding like a broken record, but you have to make a note of these kind of vocabulary that they keep repeating and they keep using, because if you get a question like this, if you get matching and classification in your test, that they're going to be using similar words like this. So it's important that you make a note of these. I do have a small list here of vocab in use. So notice how obvious yes and no wasn't used. They'll never come out and say, oh yes, I will take it, and no, I won't take it. Instead, they'll use this. I'll sign up, I'll think about it, I might wait, I'd rather do something new, or I'll forget about that one. Take a screenshot of this, take a picture of this. But this is going to be similar vocab used to be going to be used in all the matching and classification questions. Okay, I think that's it for classification. We're going to move on to our last question type, which is, I believe, sentence completion. I've taken I think it's only 3 questions we're going to do from section 4. So let's move on to that. So sentence completion. This one I've taken from section 4, and the only question type I've taken from section 4. For the reason I don't want to overwhelm anyone. You have to get used to the basics before you deep dive into the hard stuff. So section 4, like we discussed before in the introduction for listening, if you remember, it's a monologue usually, meaning only one person is the speaker. So listen carefully. In the exam, there will be no break in between questions 31 to 40. But today we will be attempting only 31, 32, and 33. This one says, complete the summary below, write no more than 2 words. Very important, no more than 2 words means no more than 2 words. Also, in questions like these, your spelling is really important, because spelling mistakes equal to no marks. And another thing to keep in mind is that, yes, they will paraphrase the question, but they will not paraphrase your answer. So the actual answer is said as is, but the information surrounding it is paraphrased. Hope that clears it up. So I'm going to start the recording now, and I think it's roughly about 2 minutes and 30 seconds long, and then we will be discussing the answers for this. So here we go, and best of luck to you.
Section 4. You will hear a talk on the importance of soil in organic agriculture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Welcome to this talk on soil science and organic farming. Dirt, soil, earth, loam, mud or dust, it doesn't matter what you call it, is of primary importance in the production of food and other crops. Most people think of it just as a substrate or medium in which plants grow, but it's more than that. It's actually a living entity. Or it should be if it's healthy, and human health is affected by the health of the soil. Healthy, living soil is literally crawling with life. There are the obvious earthworms, which burrow in the soil and help to aerate and improve it, beetles and other hard-backed insects, and various invertebrates like centipedes. Then there are fungi and bacteria, also living forms. Healthy soil needs food, air, and water to help plants grow. And the more nutrients in plants, the more available for humans and livestock. It stands to reason, therefore, that plants grown in poor soil will have few nutrients to pass on to the consumer, whose well-being will be worse off over the long term. So, Where do plants get their nourishment? Most of it comes from the soil. Some nutrients are made up of minerals from the earth, while others come from dead plant and animal matter, which is broken down over time by the living insects and other organisms in the soil. Plants depend on these little living creatures to convert minerals and other vital elements into a utilizable form that can be taken up by the plants. And it's a synergistic relationship. In turn, the plants assist those helpful organisms by releasing sugars and enzymes back into the soil. Before I go any further, let's take a look at the structure of soil. Now, if you look at the diagram, you will see that soil is made up of many different layers. Let's start at the bottom.
All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at the answers really quick. Hope you found all of them.
Section 4.
I think the audio recording for this question started playing again towards the end of the slide there, but I really apologize. I tried to make it work, but this is the last one, so I think we're good for the rest of the video. Let's look at the answers really quick. Number 31st is living entity, 32nd is nutrients, and 33rd is minerals. Now, to recap for something like this, I'd like to again add that do not paraphrase the answer itself. It will become clear to you once we look at the script, but you're only to look out for paraphrasing for the question. You're not to just make up your own words when it comes down to writing the answer. I've seen that happen before. Please don't make the same mistake. Also, spelling mistakes. In questions like these, summaries, sentence completions, where you're writing out words, make sure you're writing the correct spelling. Most of the times, we know the spelling, we know what it is, but we still write the wrong one in the answer sheet. Sometimes you get nervous, sometimes it's the time. Whatever it is, I always recommend to double check, even triple check all of your spelling before handing out the final answer sheet to your examiner when you're attempting. Okay, let's look at the scripting here. So for 31st, why don't we read the question as we go? If soil is healthy, it is a dash teeming with life such as worms, fungi, and bacteria. Now, the narrator says most people think of it as a medium, but it's more than that. It's actually a living entity, or it should be if it's healthy. Now, did you notice what just happened here? Instead of saying if soil is healthy, it is a living entity, they flipped the sentence. So instead of the answer going after if soil is healthy, it came first. Now, if you're someone who is reading the sentence and just waiting for the word soil and healthy and thinking, oh, when that word comes, I'll find my answer. You see how you missed it? You see what just happened? So this is what they do. They flip the sentence. So now the living entity word has gone by and you're waiting for the word healthy and it came, but now they're not saying the answer anymore. They're just paraphrasing the rest of the sentence. So this is what I mean when I say you have to be really vigilant and just concentrate and look for the context and meaning behind the words that they're saying and not just, sit there and wait for a word. If soil is healthy, it is a living entity teeming with life. So teeming with life, instead of teeming, they've used the word crawling with life. So that's the synonym there. And the rest of it is very similar to what's written in the question. For 32nd, if plants are grown in poor soil, they will lack dash and human health will suffer. It stands to reason that plants grown in poor soil, so this is good, they're saying the same thing, will have few nutrients. Now, lack and few mean the same thing. So instead of saying lack, he says few nutrients. So lack nutrients, few nutrients, nutrients is your answer. Instead of saying human health will suffer, he says to pass on to the consumer. Consumer is human, whose well being will be worse off over the long term, whose health will suffer. So, consumers' health will suffer, is what it means. Let's look at the 33rd. Plants are nourished by organic matter, dash and other essential elements which are broken down by insects and other organisms in a synergistic relationship. Now, the last one here is doing the same thing as the 31st. They're flipping the information. Some nutrients are made up of minerals, so the answer came from earth, while others come from dead plant and animal matter. Now, we all know that dead plant and animal matter is organic matter. So they did the same thing what they did in the 31st. They flipped the sentence. So now the answer comes first and then this information comes second. So if you're not paying attention, if you're not concentrating, and if you're looking for specific words to come out, sometimes it happens. We've seen it in the 32nd that it happened there, but it doesn't happen all the time. So you have to really, really focus on the meaning of it all, rather than waiting for specific words to show up. All right, so these three are the answers. If you got them correct, wonderful. If you didn't get them correct, that's fine too. Like I said, we're learning, we're here to understand. To summarize, I would like to say paraphrasing and knowledge of synonyms is absolute king in listening. As a matter of fact, in all of IELTS modules. So keep on practicing, keep on adding on to your vocabulary, and keep on adding on to your knowledge of synonyms as well. So that's it for types. This is a pat on the back for everyone who's stuck throughout the video with me, and we've made it so far. We will be revising tips and tricks quickly in the next small little portion of the video now. Let's take a look. I like to call this how can I. So this just means how can I score better? How can I get the band score I want? How can I, go from maybe a lesser band to a higher band? So to recap, number one, of course, on my list is practice, practice, practice. I know I sound like a complete broken record when I say this, but practice is ultimately your savior, no matter what anyone says or guarantees about what bands they can get you. If you don't put in the hard work yourself, then the results are going to show. So practice is key, guys. Number two in my list is develop reading techniques. Now, speed reading consists of skimming and scanning. Skimming meaning to get a text overview. You have an idea of what they're going to talk about. And scanning is to locate keywords like, who, where, when, how, stuff like that. Next is keywords are your best friends. So when you're scanning, make sure you locate those keywords. Try to predict what part of text might help you find the right answers. Is it a name? Is it a location you're looking for? Is it a number you're looking for? What is it that you're looking for? Because if you can predict that information, it gets so much easier for you to get to the answer in the first place. Follow instructions carefully and read questions calmly. Most of the time, a lot of students who have, gone on to receive higher bands are sometimes so freaked out in the first attempt that they just miss the information completely. They don't know what the speaker is talking about because they're just so nervous to be sitting in the exam room and thinking, I'm taking the IELTS I'm taking the test, will I get good marks? So while you're thinking that, you're actually missing what's happening. So that's why I say, of course, follow instructions carefully, but read the questions calmly, okay? Try not to lose it. Next up is do not leave anything unanswered. I cannot stress this enough. Just don't leave a blank. Just don't leave a blank space in your answer sheet if you can help it. For example, in matching and MCQs, there is, you can guess in these kind of questions if you've just missed something out. guessing is better than leaving something empty at the end of the day, because desperate times call for desperate measures. Probable answer is better than a definitive zero score. If you have two possible answers, write both of them, read the text again, and eliminate based on the text and other answers in text. So, for example, we're doing matching, or we're doing even multiple choice, or really any kind of question that can have two answers. So, if you're confused while you're listening to the test, just write both of them down quickly. And then when you're filling out at the end of the test, you're transferring your answers, you can read the text again carefully and then eliminate, right? If you think, okay, now that I look at all the other options I've chosen, this one doesn't make, so if you have A and B, if you say, okay, A doesn't make sense anymore, B should be the answer, then do that. So even if while you're going through the test, while you're listening, if you think you have two answers that could be the correct option, then just write both of them down and then use the elimination process later on when you're transferring your answers to the answer sheet. Sequence matters. Again, I cannot stress this enough. I've said this in the whole video, and I know you're annoyed by me saying this again and again, but it really does matter. So many times what happens is you are sitting there waiting for the answer to come to you, but the truth is it's all chronological. It all goes in an order. So if you miss one, then just move on, because listening goes by fast, especially in section 3 and 4. So if you miss one, there are chances you're going to miss the next 3. So really just move on. If you miss, don't miss the next 3 getting stuck on 1. Another advice I can give you is to watch movies, series, news, songs, podcasts. I've not written it here, but podcasts with a British accent. Accent is something that will get you used to pronunciations in the test. So this is also really, really, really important. Probably your only teacher is going to tell you to go watch movies, but it is something that will help you massively in this test. One of my favorite movies of all time is Harry Potter, but sometimes I get so stuck into watching the movie that I forget about the accent altogether. So if that's you, then maybe don't watch Harry Potter. But that's just a suggestion I'm throwing out there. Next up is don't wait too long for answers. Chances are you've missed it already. So we discussed this before. If you're waiting and the answer is not coming and you're finding answers for the questions that are after that, chances are you've missed it. The best case scenario is to move on. The reason I keep saying this again and again is because a lot of time this is the only reason why a lot of students have less bands in listening, because they keep sitting there and they keep waiting for the answer to come and never comes, and they miss like the next 5 of them. So please don't do that mistake. Beware of distractions. We've talked about all kinds of distractions in all kinds of question types, and this is something that you need to beware of. If you're just sitting there expecting for the answer to fall in your lap, that's not going to happen. There's going to be distractions and there's going to be paraphrasing. So always pay attention. Spelling mistakes. Don't lose marks because of silly mistakes. Now, another thing that a lot of people have said to me, okay, I know the spelling for this. I know I wrote it wrong, but I know the spelling for this. I just wrote it wrong because we're practicing. Okay. Do you realize that when you're giving the exam, the pressure is going to be that much more, and how much stress you're going to be in? So if you're making the spelling mistakes when you're practicing, I'm 100% sure you're going to make the same spelling mistakes when you're giving the exam. So don't try to tell yourself, oh, I just made the spelling mistake because I'm practicing, but I know the answer. Practice like you're giving the exam. Don't lose marks because of silly mistakes. This actually goes for writing way more than it goes for listening, but I'm still putting it here. Paraphrasing. So we talked about paraphrasing. No matter what module you could be doing, reading, you could be doing writing, you could be doing listening. Paraphrasing comes in action everywhere. Even when you're speaking, paraphrasing comes in action. So make it your best friend, get familiar with the concept of paraphrasing, and make sure you practice exercises just on paraphrasing so you get really good at it. But most importantly, see, I even have fancy animation for that. It's so important. Please don't lose heart if you didn't understand. Even if you understood a little bit of what I'm talking about today, that's a great start. Even if you understood like 60% of what I was saying, then that's fine. We need to practice, 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 and we don't need to get demotivated that, I didn't get what she was talking about and I didn't get all the answers. Nobody's perfect. That's what we're here to do. I keep repeating this. We're here to learn and we're here to understand and we're here to get better. So don't expect to excel in the first try and sometimes even in the fifth try. So you got this. Just practice, practice, practice. All right, you guys, we made it to the end. This is the end of the video. Please go ahead and like and subscribe if you liked this tutorial on listening. You can follow me on social media, Instagram and Facebook. The name of our page is My Easy IELTS. Actually, someone messaged me the other day just saying, Easy IELTS, what do you mean? And I didn't know what to say. I think it's self-explanatory. It's Easy IELTS. Anyway, I'm trying to work on the reading module and I'll try to upload that video as soon as possible, but there is so much stuff to uncover. I just don't even know where to begin and where to end. Other than that, writing would be number 3 and speaking would be number 4. Again, I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. Thank you for listening to me and thank you for being a part of this. I hope that this information helped someone somewhere. I tried to put together as much as I could in one video. You can go ahead and click on the link in the description. I'm still working on the website to go up. There's still few changes that we have to make. So I just have my Instagram link in the bio right now. So if you have some questions about classes or writing evaluation, you can go ahead and click on the link and contact me there. All right, I think that's all, folks. Have a good day or good night wherever you are, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye now.